Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Carl Price. I'm a senior environmental scientist with Caltrans in District 7. Before we get started, I just want to thank the City of Azusa for allowing us to use their facility here, and also to all the city staff who've helped us coordinate this effort. It's been a great help, and we really do appreciate it. And we have Mayor Robert Gonzalez here in the audience, so if you'd like to say a few words, please do.
Thank you, sir. Just good evening, and thank you for taking your time and your schedules to be here to this important topic. And I want to, thank you. I'm joined this evening by our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Eddie Alvarez, Councilmember Jesse Avila, Councilmember Andrew Mendez, and Councilmember Dennis Beckwith. Also from the City of Glendora, Councilmember Gary Boyer. Thank you for being here in Azusa, and welcome all of you. I think that, like I said, this is important for us, or for Caltrans, to get as much information regarding this project as possible. So as you are welcome here in the city of Azusa, I guess we will go ahead and use the Azusa rules, as opposed to, I don't know how Caltrans or the state will use their format, but in our building, we don't allow clapping, because if I allow clapping, then I have to allow booing. And so I want to be respectful of everybody's opinions and everybody's thoughts. And so we want to hear everything, pros and cons. And so just be respectful of everybody in this room. Thank you for taking the time to be here again, and we will see where this goes. But again, welcome to the beautiful city of Azusa, and I thank you for taking your time being here this evening. Thank you.
You can go ahead and clap. It's okay. All right. Okay, you just no booing, just clap. All right, good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rebecca Barantes, and I'm with the Sierra Group, and I am your moderator for this evening, and I'll be assisting Carl Price with Caltrans District 7's Environmental Affairs Department. Now, this is the public hearing for the draft environmental impact report and environmental assessment for the SR-39 reopening project. This is the next step in the environmental process and one of many opportunities for the public to have information and to give input on this project. Your input is very important, and if you want to speak during the public comment period that's coming up later in the presentation, you need to fill out a speaker card, which you should have picked up at the front sign-in desk. And if you didn't get one, please raise your hand and a staff member will bring one to you. As you complete your speaker comment card, please go ahead, hold it up in the air, and we'll come collect it, and it'll come up here up front to me, and I'll be reading in order the cards and the speakers' names. You can also write your comments on the speaker comment card and hand those in as well at the end of the meeting. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Carl Price, Senior Environmental Scientist with Caltrans District 7. Carl?
All right, thank you, Rebecca. So the purpose of the meeting this evening is a few things. We want to provide a brief summary of the draft environmental impact report, environmental assessment. We want to describe the decision process that will be undergone to identify the preferred alternative. We want to provide a summary of what the next steps will be in this process. And then most importantly, we want to listen to you. We want to hear your public comments, hear your thoughts, hear your ideas. Those will be incorporated into the public record, and they will also be included in the final environmental document with responses to your comments. So, as most of you are probably aware, State Route 39 is a winding, narrow two-lane road. It traverses rugged terrain and connects the San Gabriel Valley to State Route 2 in the San Gabriel Mountains. It provides access to the Angeles National Forest for hiking, camping, and a variety of recreational activities. but the last 4.4 miles of this road have been closed for many years due to rock slides. But before that closure, State Route 39 provided another route to access the mountain community of Wrightwood and the cities in the high desert. A little bit of background about this section of roadway. It's been closed since 1978 because of unstable slopes above and below the roadway. And this, we're talking about the area just north of Crystal Lake Road up to State Route 2. There are frequent rock slides that send dirt and rocks onto the road, and that makes it unsafe for people to use the road. So since 1990, Caltrans maintenance crews have been maintaining this section by clearing debris and making repairs, but they're basically just doing enough to keep the road open for Forest Service personnel and for emergency personnel like Sheriff's Department and fire forces and so on. So it's just a minimal effort that's being done for the last several years. So, we have made other attempts to open this section of roadway. Back in 2009, an environmental document was prepared and a project was approved to reopen this segment by implementing major construction work to stabilize the damaged roadway. The first phase of that project restored 5 sections of the collapsed roadway, and that work was completed back in 2011. However, due to a combination of factors that included escalating construction costs and fiscal constraints that were going on at that time, the geological instability of the area, and the fully protected status of the Nelson's bighorn sheep, the preferred alternative that had been selected and approved in 2009 was no longer deemed viable. So in May of 2012, Caltrans terminated the previously chosen alternative and selected the no-build option, and that basically put an end to that project. So, however, Caltrans and others still believe there's value in reopening this segment of the roadway, and so we initiated a new project a few years back to do that. This slide shows a big picture schedule for this project as we go from the environmental process through construction. We began the PAED, or Project Approval Environmental Document phase, back in the fall of 2020. We expect to complete this phase in the winter of this year, the end of 24, early 25, do our final design work for the next several years, begin construction, and then ultimately complete construction in the spring of 2033. So it's a several-year process, and we're still in the early stages of that. So on a more refined or more granular level, the environmental process that we're going through is shown here on the screen. We held a scoping meeting for this project back in December of 2022. Since that time, we've been preparing environmental technical studies, performing studies, identifying impacts, and screening our alternatives that we had selected for analysis. Currently, we're in the circulation period for our environmental document. We have the document out for public review, and we have our public hearing tonight, and then we have a second virtual public hearing coming in on Saturday. So after this public comment period closes, we will be identifying our preferred alternatives. We'll take the information that we have, tabulated and put together in the environmental document, along with your comments. We'll evaluate the alternatives and identify a preferred alternative, and then that will be identified in the final environmental document, which we anticipate to complete in the fall of this year. Now, it occurred to the project team that, very few people have actually seen the closed section of roadway. So I want to take a moment to give you a visual of what the area looks like, send you up the mountain, and so you can take a brief look at the conditions up there. Dance a little bit too. Obviously, there's a lot of debris that comes down off this hillside on the roadway, damages the roadway. That needs to be removed periodically so emergency vehicles can get through. There's some of the damage that occurs, that has occurred in the past. Okay, so that was just a little bit of what it actually looks like up there and some of the issues that we have to deal with the rockfall and such. So I want to talk a little bit now about the project purpose and need. Basically the purpose and need is really the driving force behind our projects. You can think of the need as identifying the problem or the problems that we're trying to solve, and the purpose identifies the goals or the objectives that address those problems. So we'll start with the project purpose, and basically, it's to restore access between Interstate 210 and State Route 2. We want to enhance access for fire suppression forces, search and rescue, and other emergency response personnel. We hope to improve multimodal access in accordance with Caltrans Complete Streets policy, and we want to reduce vehicle congestion, address parking capacity issues, and improve public safety up along State Route 39. The project need, currently, the conditions there continue to degrade and pose a safety hazard to our maintenance crews who are up there quite often to clear the debris that falls down, and other users of the roadway as well. We want to provide an alternate, more direct route for motorists between the San Gabriel Valley and Wrightwood or communities in the high desert. We need to comply with the California Streets and Highways codes by maintaining the state highway, identifying and closing gaps in the state highway system, which this 4.4-mile segment is a gap in the system, and by identifying and addressing safety and long-term maintenance issues. Another project need is to assist in satisfying goals and policies that are outlined in the Angeles National Forest Land Management Plan as far as access and preservation go, and providing enhanced access for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and other emergency service personnel in search and rescue activities, and doing it in a way that reduces response times for those agencies. So when we started our evaluation of the project, we had a no-build alternative and 5 build alternatives that were identified. Over the last several months, 2 of those alternatives have been eliminated from consideration. The viaduct alternative was removed because of the excessively high cost, and because of changes to the status in the bighorn sheep. Appears to no longer be necessary to completely move the roadway away from the hillside. And then the single travel lane alternative, that was eliminated because of cost savings that we had expected to be achieved just weren't there once we got further into our analysis. But also more importantly, there were safety concerns with that alternative that we were not able to resolve satisfactorily. So those 2 alternatives were eliminated, and that leaves us with 3 build alternatives and the 1 no-build alternative. And you can probably tell from the names of the alternatives, as you move from alternative 2 to 3 to 4, we get progressively increasing access to that closed segment. Goes from basically emergency access only all the way to a full opening. So the no-build excuse me. The no-build alternative, it proposes to maintain the existing road with no improvements. Caltrans would continue to perform the minimal maintenance activities that we do today, just enough so that the road can be used by emergency personnel, but basically nothing else. Alternative 2, we call it the evacuation route. It proposes to rehabilitate the pavement and maintain the closed segment as an evacuation route, as the name implies. It involves limited roadway restoration. The road would continue to be closed to the public. Highway traffic and access would be strictly limited to emergency service personnel, Forest Service, and our maintenance crews. Construction components of this alternative include reconstructing the pavement with new asphalt, restoring some of the damaged drainage systems, removal of roadside obstructions such as boulders and trees and debris, repairing and constructing soldier pile walls to stabilize the failed pavement sections, and then upgrading the guardrails on the roadway. Alternative 3 is the active transportation access alternative. It would include those roadway improvements that I just mentioned for alternative 2, but would also include sustainable parking areas at the beginning and ending of the closed section, 3 major viaduct structures, a rock shed, 5 soldier pile retaining walls, and then rock scaling at 10 locations. Rock scaling is, as you can see on the screen, that's where crews go up there to remove loose rocks and debris so that it doesn't fall down when somebody's actually on the road down below. So it's an important safety measure that we do. There would also be an on-site shuttle service that will be operated by trained drivers that carry people in and out of the area. We would be limiting shuttle speeds to 15 miles per hour with extreme caution used near well-marked wildlife crossings, which would be identified along the roadway. And the idea here is to make the road safe enough for people to enjoy the outdoor activities, such as hiking, biking, picnicking, and camping, and so on. And then, of course, emergency and maintenance vehicles will still have full access. And alternative 4 is the full opening alternative that proposes rehabilitating and reopening the roadway, constructing bridges and rock sheds, and installing wildlife fences to provide added protection for the bighorn sheep and other wildlife in the area. So it would provide unrestricted access to through traffic between Interstate 210 and State Route 2. The proposed elements of this alternative are the same as alternative 3, except there are no parking lots proposed. Instead, we're proposing to convert the junction of State Route 39 and State Route 2 into a roundabout. And then this alternative would also add 2 additional viaducts at various locations that would facilitate wildlife crossing and install continuous barrier fencing to restrict bighorn sheep access to keep them off of the roadway. So these are some of the common design features of alternatives 2, 3, and 4. I've mentioned these earlier, but roadway rehabilitation, roadway delineation or striping, clearing away debris, repairing the drainage systems, and then retaining walls to capture any debris that might come down off the slopes. Now, alternatives 3 and 4, they include viaducts that would allow debris to slide downhill without damaging the roadway. Basically, as you can see in this picture of a generic viaduct from some other location, the debris would just slide underneath the highway and therefore prevent damage to the roadway. It would also allow wildlife to cross underneath the highway so that they would not encounter vehicles when they do that. And the graphic on the right-hand side shows where those viaducts and wildlife crossings would be located. As you can see, there's 3 on the left-hand side. That's for alternative 3. On the right-hand side is the locations for alternative 4. So when we are evaluating this project and evaluating the alternatives, we looked at a wide variety of environmental resource issues that are shown on the screen. And most of these resource issues we determined would not be affected or would have only minimal impacts or minimally affected. But there are a few topics that I think are worth pointing out. So we'll go through these now. So these are the key areas that I want to point out, and we'll go through these one by one. So as I mentioned earlier, improving the ability of emergency response personnel to get up and down the mountain is a key element driving this project. So as you might expect, the 3 build alternatives have different degrees of success at achieving that. Alternatives 2 and 3 would improve the roadway, but because it would be restricted and not completely open, the gates would be closed. Therefore, emergency personnel would have to stop and open those gates before they could pass through. For alternative 4, the road would be completely open with unrestricted access, so it would provide quicker and more efficient access for emergency personnel. Closing the gap in the road network and providing an alternative route into the mountains beyond are also part of the need driving this project. Alternative 2 would not really accomplish that since it would be restricted only to maintenance personnel. Alternative 3 would improve access for pedestrians, bicyclists, and public transportation through that shuttle service I mentioned. Alternative 4 would improve access to everybody, pedestrians, cyclists, public transportation, and vehicles, all vehicle types. Okay, recreation and Section 4F. Section 4F is not a well-known area amongst the public, but it refers to the section of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act of 1966 that provides protection for public parks, recreational areas, and wildlife refuges, along with historic sites. Although it does not specifically protect national forests, it does offer protection to the types of facilities that I just mentioned that may be located within the forest. So this map shows the 4F, Section 4F resources that were identified in the vicinity of our project. Not all of these actually qualify as 4F resources. Some of them are recreational, but not 4F resources. Most either do not meet the definition of Section 4F resource, or they're too far away from the project to actually be affected. The resources that are close enough to be affected are listed here on the screen. We've got the Islip Saddle day use area. That will be affected or would be affected by alternatives 3 and 4 if one of those was selected. Alternative 3 would use a portion of that as the northern parking lot for the shuttle service. Alternative 4 proposes to put a roundabout there at the State Route 2, State Route 39 interchange, and that roundabout would encroach onto the Islip Saddle day use area. Parking of that area would be reconfigured, and we would not actually lose any parking spaces. But we would have to limit use of that area during construction, just for safety reasons. Obviously, that would require approval from the Forest Service. A lot of things that we're doing here would require coordination with and approval from the Forest Service. So these other areas, the Crystal Lake recreation area, the trails that are mentioned here, the Vista Point and the French Wall would not be affected. The Pacific Crest Trail, it's not a 4F resource, but it obviously is an important resource for people. And I wanted to point out that there will be no direct impacts to the trail. But for safety reasons, we would need to detour hikers away from it during construction for alternatives 3 and 4. That would be just a temporary detour during construction. All right, we looked at a wide variety of biological resources. Most of them we determined would receive minimal or no impacts. These areas, these are the areas that we concluded would not be impacted or would have minimal impacts. We looked at wildlife movement corridors, and there are no known corridors in the project area. There were no sensitive plant species observed in the project area, observed during our surveys. Wetlands and waters would be minimally impacted. We have 10 drainages there that cross the roadway. Most of them are ephemeral. I think only one is permanent, and that's the Snow Springs area. Total impacts would be, depending on alternative, would be pretty small. The core jurisdiction and California Department of Fish and Wildlife jurisdiction are shown here. But it's important to note that these drainages are very, very narrow, very small. And this is the sum total of impacts for those 10 drainages. We did not find any threatened or endangered species within the project area, and we don't anticipate impacts from invasive species. We'll take steps to avoid that. There are some endangered species or threatened endangered species in the general vicinity of the project. The leaf-billed vireo, southwestern willow flycatcher, southwestern mountain yellow-legged frog, and other species. We know they're in the general vicinity of the project, but they were not observed during our previous surveys. We will be doing additional surveys prior to construction as the project moves forward. So along the project area, we have 5 different natural community types. 3 of these would be affected by the project. And as we move from alternative 2 to 3 to 4, the potential impacts get progressively greater because of the additional work that would be done. I think it's important to remember that this corridor or this work area would be 4.4 miles long, and any impacts would occur in a very narrow strip adjacent, just upslope or downslope of the roadway. Any areas that are temporarily impacted would be revegetated, replanted, so we would address those temporary impacts. All right, so one resource that's front and center in people's minds here for this project is the Nelson's bighorn sheep. It's not listed as threatened or endangered, but it does receive special attention from the Forest Service or from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So obviously coordination with those agencies is crucial to any project that might move forward. We know the bighorn sheep are in the area. We've seen them near the roadway. We've seen them walking on the roadway. So we know they're there. Except under very limited circumstances, the California Fish and Game Code does not allow anyone to harm or kill a fully protected species, including bighorn sheep. Their status is kind of changing or has changed recently. Last year there was a Senate Bill 147 that was signed by the governor that amended the state's fully protected species status. And now it refers to the bighorn sheep as fully protected species, except for the Nelson subspecies. So, there's a change there that we need to be aware of and address. And we'll work with California Department of Fish and Wildlife on that issue. We have and continue to design this product to minimize potential harm to the sheep. And because of this change in status, we don't yet know what kind of permitting mechanism might be required by Cal Fish and Wildlife with regard to the sheep, but we will be working with them as this project moves forward to make sure that we address their concerns and we address the Forest Service concerns regarding the sheep and other species. And looking at visual and aesthetic issues, we have, alternative 2 would have minimal impact, little change to the existing features. Alternative 3 would have a moderate impact because of the addition of the viaducts and the rock shed. And then similarly, alternative 4 would have a little bit more visual intrusion because of the additional viaducts and the wildlife exclusionary fencing. We would, whatever alternative is selected, we will minimize those impacts by giving them aesthetic treatments, by giving these elements aesthetic treatments to help them blend into the surrounding environment. So we will address that issue. And then here are some examples of what these structures might look like. And these are just samples from other locations. We've got a roundabout on the upper left, a rock shed from the Big Sur coast, and then a viaduct here. These structures obviously have not been designed yet for this project. We don't know what they'll look like, but we would use similar aesthetic treatments to help them blend into the surrounding areas. Of course, we'll work with the Forest Service to make sure we meet their aesthetic guidelines as well. So where do we go from here? The next steps are that obviously the environmental document, the draft environmental document is available for public review. This meeting is being recorded and will be viewable on the Caltrans YouTube channel. Meeting presentation will be posted on our Caltrans District 7 website. We're in the middle of our 60-day public comment period, so that will close on May 11th. So we encourage everybody to provide comments prior to May 11th. We have another virtual public hearing coming up on Saturday. So if you would like to hear this information again, it will be available on Saturday. We also anticipate having our final environmental document ready by the fall of this year, and then final project approval next spring. So we would like to hear from you. That's why we've invited you here. We would like to hear your comments on the draft document, on the impacts, on the alternatives, the mitigation measures, anything you would like to provide comments on, we'll take those. If you have questions, we will review those and answer those in the final environmental document. Again, we would like for you to provide comments by Saturday, May 11th. All comments will be included in the final document along with responses to those comments. So this is your time to let us know what you think, good or bad, and we will take your comments very seriously, and they will help inform our decision as we move forward. So how do you provide comments? You can comment verbally tonight, or you can provide a written comment card here. You can mail comments to me at the address that's shown here, or you can email comments to the email address that's on the screen as well. And I think we probably have those posted someplace so you can see them again after this presentation. So again, your input's important. Oh, this is your slide. I was on a roll. All right, so I'll turn it back over to Rebecca, and she will conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Carl. All right, as Carl said, your input is very important, and we have at least 5 speaker cards for tonight. If there's anyone else who would like to speak, please hold up your hand, and Laura here with the pink blouse on, she will give you a card, and you can fill that out. When you speak, we'd like you to come to the podium, and if I could get Adrian or someone to turn the microphone around, that would be great. We want you to start with your first and last name. Speak clearly into the microphone for the court reporter and the audience. Each comment and question, as Carl said, will be addressed in writing in the final environmental document. So we're not going to have any responses to your comments or questions tonight. And we are using Azusa rules, as Mayor Gonzalez said. We are not going to be clapping or booing or anything like that. We're going to act respectfully. We're going to listen respectfully and speak respectfully. So we really appreciate your cooperation there. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and call on our first couple of speakers. Tonight we have Daniel Hike, H-Y-K-E, as our first speaker, and that will be followed by Nathan Nunez. There you are. Okay, you can come forward too. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hike.
Yeah, I'm Daniel Hike, lifelong resident of the San Gabriel Valley here and an avid hiker. I use Highway 39 all the time. I'm up there at Crystal Lake, Mount Islip, hiking, and really enjoy the beautiful San Gabriel Mountains. And as you can see from my T-shirt, the new San Gabriel Mountains National Monument, which hopefully President Biden will expand here in a month or so. My biggest concern about the expansion, especially Alternative 4, is increased traffic load. Right now, you go up to Crystal Lake, and it's a nice drive. It's not overcrowded, and I enjoy that. I have seen some reckless driving on Highway 39. As you know, there's a lot of accidents on that road because there's some very tight hairpin turns, and I don't know how you mitigate that. I'm very concerned if this road is put through to Angeles Crest Highway, it's going to create a circuit because a lot of sports drivers drive up the Angeles Crest, they go a certain distance and they turn around and come back down the Angeles Crest. Now they're going to have a complete circuit. They're going to go up the Angeles Crest and they're going to come down Highway 39. And I think it's going to lead to a lot more accidents. I think it's going to lead to more highway deaths and a huge impact on emergency services. And that is of great concern to me. Another impact, of course, is the wildlife. When you increase traffic on a road, there will be more roadkill. There is no way to avoid roadkill with increased traffic. Now, the viaducts are a great idea. I totally support that. Keep the sheep underneath the road, that's wonderful. But there will be increased traffic on that road, and that's going to have an impact on all types of wildlife in the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. My hope is that we can do an alternative, such as Alternative 3, where the traffic load is controlled, and we'd even go a step further, kind of a hybrid 3 and 4, where we could actually give permits to people that needed to use the highway once it is reopened, such as doctors, nurses, emergency personnel, even people with essential employment could get a permit and use that highway. So it does have, will allow for traffic flow, even schools and buses and things like that that need to get up to Wrightwood or up to the Pacific Crest Trail for recreational purposes. We could open it up that way. I'm just very concerned about a fully open road where everybody's going to have access because it's going to really increase the traffic load. And I think that's my time's up. Thank you.
Right on time. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Nathan Nunez. And after that, we have Matthew Chavez.
So my name is Nathan Nunez, and I'm a lineal descendant of a Serrano Native American village located in the San Gabriel Mountains. Additionally, I lead a volunteer group called the Canyon City Environmental Project. I'm here to support Alternative 2, the public safety option, also called the minimum build alternative. There are 3 reasons I support the minimum build alternative. Current visitor recreation within the high-use areas adjacent to Highway 39 are beyond management capacity for the Forest Service and other participating agencies. This past summer, my volunteer group removed more than 2 tons or 4,000 pounds of trash from the East Fork of the San Gabriel River in 3 hours with 40-plus volunteers. In August of 2023, the LA Times released an article highlighting the dozens of car-sized trash piles lining the San Gabriel River and East Fork Road. During this time, I had employees from several agencies express they were overwhelmed and felt powerless at the ongoing environmental impacts and unacceptable visitor conditions. As per the latest USDA Forest Service statistics, 2021, the Azusa National Forest received 4.59 million recreation-based visits, more than Yosemite National Park and rivaling Grand Canyon National Park. In contrast to the mentioned national parks, the Azusa National Forest does not have the infrastructure, capacity, funds, or resources to manage these levels of existing recreation. The reopening of SR-39 will not improve current conditions, as a majority of visitors travel for the easily accessible river water within the lower reaches of SR-39 and not Highway 2. Local priorities for the state of California and Caltrans should be focused on cooperative involvement with the Azusa National Forest, participating agencies, and communities to ensure the safety and maintenance of existing roads, developing traffic calming measures at the entrance of SR-39 in Azusa, and providing support on capital improvement projects such as Azusa Wilderness Park and Roundabout. Alternative 4 would tie up already strained Caltrans resources in a project destined to balloon in budget, face numerous constraints and setbacks, and ignore the current overwhelming visitor conditions within the National Forest. The closed section of SR-39 has been closed longer than has ever been open. SR-39 is no different than the costly failures of the Road to Nowhere and Bridge to Nowhere and the East Fork of the Azusa National Forest. These 3 failures are a glaring testament to nature's resilience and often impermeability. As I conclude, I will leave Caltrans supporters of the reopening and Congresswoman Napolitano's office with a challenge. Prove to us who frequently visit and care for the San Gabriel Mountains how this will benefit an already strained Forest Service and participating agencies, including Caltrans itself. Prove to us your commitment, collaboration, and attention to ensuring the safety of visitors, maintenance of existing roads, implementation of traffic calming measures at the entrance of SR-39 in Azusa, and providing support on capital improvement projects such as the Azusa Wilderness Park. Commit to volunteers and people like myself for a better future where dozens of trash piles the size of small cars are never again strewn across a beautiful forest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder to everyone who's speaking tonight, we have a 3-minute limit on your speaking time. And you will hear that little beeper go off. And there's some lights on top there on your podium and a timer. So take a look at that as you're speaking. All right, our next speaker, Matthew Chavez. And after that, we have, I'm going to mispronounce this, maybe, Neil Potrin? Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Chavez, and I am a local Boy Scout of Troop 888. And today, I believe, is a significant occasion as we gather to discuss the reopening of the Caltrans State Route 39. For too long, this 4.4-mile stretch of road has been inaccessible and closed off due to the persistent threat of rock slides and road degradation over time. But now as we gather here, I urge us all to seize this opportunity to embrace the possibility of reopening SR-39, especially under the 4th alternative. The closure of SR-39 has undoubtedly caused travel inconvenience, detours, and delays for commuters. I believe that SR-39 is about reconnecting communities, revitalizing travel routes, and restoring a sense of normalcy to those who have been affected by this closure. The reopening of this route is necessary in ensuring that everyone has an accessible and reliable and efficient transportation through SR-39. But most importantly, I think that the opening of SR-39 should be focused on safety. The closure of this roadway was for our safety due to the road's degradation and its environmental hazards. These rock slides and road degradation have made the route impassable, putting lives at risk and hindering emergency response efforts. However, I think that opening SR-39 under the fourth alternative could put in place better safety features to mitigate the risks and ensure safety to all those who travel along its path. Of course, the opening of SR-39 will not be without its challenges, but I think that with careful planning, extensive repairs, and ongoing maintenance, we can address these underlying issues that led to its closure. As we move forward, I'd like us to all remember the importance of collaboration and community spirit, and I think that together that we can, open SR-39 and pave a safer and more connected and prosperous community with the opening of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Neil. Pronounce your name for me?
Polson.
Holton. Thank you.
Hello,
Okay,
Neil
and
Polson.
following that, we have Daniel Now, N-A-U? Okay, thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you. Neil Polson out of Covina. So thank you again so much for putting everything on tonight. I think full opening is just the baseline of where we need to start thinking, right? It was what was expected in the 70s when it closed down. It's something that's still needed for access to the forest. When the 2 has a closure or something else going on, it will provide another exit from Angeles Highway. And I think that's going to be real important that that's, again, just the baseline. But a lot has happened, obviously, in the 45, almost 50 years since, as far as becoming a national monument, as far as the population that shows up or that is present, as I was just hearing, above some of the largest national parks, which obviously doesn't have a good outlet for. And so I think things where the pedestrian and the accessibility access is important, where if you can actually open that up to pedestrian, if you can open that up like Zion to e-bikes or other mobility needs, to have a 4.5-mile long trail in the forest in a way that just isn't available anywhere else in Southern California and to the tens of millions, 10 million people down in Metro LA. So the only real way to do both 3 and 4 or 2 and 3 would be those viaducts, having a separate road go alongside and then maintaining the existing one as an actual recreation space. I think, again, opening the road, getting full access is just a baseline needed for what the plan is and access to the forest. But there's a real opportunity here with rehabilitating what is there to make something that can really shine from the San Gabriel Valley in a way that just wasn't feasible 40, 45 years ago that we can't do today. So I hear that we've taken the viaduct off the table. I think that is still an important option. That would be the best way for full access, and then maintaining the existing road again for some kind of mobility access, recreation access, having those additional parking lots, having the shuttles, all of the above is what's really needed to serve the 10 million people that would have access to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Now, and then that will be followed by Jose Enriquez.
Hello, my name's Daniel Now, and I could not agree more with the last speaker. That option 4 is definitely, I think, it's really, it's just interesting that we had this at one time, and I feel, as the last speaker said, we just kind of gave up on this highway. Now, I've lived in LA Metro all my life, but in the last 3 years, I've lived in Wrightwood. I moved to Wrightwood a few years ago, and just interesting, in the time that I've lived in Wrightwood, we've had multiple, I guess you could say natural disasters, floods, fires, things like that, where Highway 2 has been closed. Just last year, even Hurricane Hillary in the summer took out Sheep Creek Bridge right by my house on the 2. And what does that do for me? Well, it makes it to where, you're kind of at times trapped in town. It's just wonderful to have another option to, frankly, just get out of Dodge. But, also it's just about, not just about me and just trying to get out of Dodge and all that, but just the public. I agree that with some that have spoke today that, this is really going to help the National Park Service, state, local, federal agencies across the board with public safety, access to the forest, natural resource management, all that. I think that that's so enhanced by the opening of this highway that was, again, once something that we all had and enjoyed. But I would say that if is not complete opening is not possible, I still think that the public should be able to use this road and not just through the other options. I mean, I don't know if anybody's considered a toll road type thing. We have the fast track. And now I'm not saying this would make a major commuting corridor, as some of the other speakers have noted today, that a lot of folks just do not drive past, say, Cold Brook Camp on Highway 39 or the upper stretches up to Crystal Lake. I live in Wrightwood now. I mean, I could tell you the people in Wrightwood, they're very concerned about, oh my God, it's going to open up all the crazies from San Gabriel Canyon or LA are going to come up to, Wrightwood, our mountain town. I disagree with that. All right. We have the two open all the time. I mean, where does that go? To Dodger Stadium? That's like the Mecca for LA crazies. And, I don't see that happening right now. So I don't think it's going to destroy, that we're not going to become the next San Gabriel Canyon. I think that's what a lot of people are worried about up there. But, I welcome it. We need to have people enjoying the resources up there and managing the national forest and making it a real national park, experience, not like what we have now. You can't access it. It's just sad. We need to tap into that potential of the highway, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next speaker is Jose Enriquez, and following that, we have Gary Jones.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Jose Enriquez, and I'm glad I followed him because one of my topics is Wrightwood. I've heard the same things he's heard from the Wrightwood community. I know he speaks differently, but I've heard concern from the Wrightwood community that they don't want it open. And so I was wondering if you guys might have a public meeting at Wrightwood, because I think you might get some good feedback or input. Other food for thought is there's constantly winter closures in the forest. And so I was wondering if it's been considered for alternative 4 and even 3 seasonal closures because they get a lot of snow up there. Another thing is 2030 is when they plan to finish the project, if I remember correctly, and rerouting the Pacific Crest Trail for that long, there's going to be grumblings from the Pacific Crest Trail Association because it's a conditional trail and they like to keep, it's already a route from Mexico to Canada, and so they hate extending it more than it has to be. And so that might be a concern. The other thing I thought about here in the presentation is Caltrans started the North Fork project, or North Fork Bridge project on the same road, Azusa, and they ran out of funding and couldn't finish it. And that's a microscopic project compared to the project being proposed now. And so I'm wondering, has there been a feasibility study as far as assuring that the funding will be there for such a big undertaking? And I think there was one more, and I can't remember now, but I think those are the things that popped into my head at the time. And the steepness of the road, and I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gary Jones, and following that, we have Jose Jimenez.
Gary Jones, I'm a resident of Glendora, and I'm young enough to have traveled on that road many times. And I have to say that at the time, it was very handy to have access to like Baden Powell and Wrightwood and the other camping grounds up there like Buckhorn and Cooper Canyon. And it was a lot easier to get there. And I understand some of the concerns about traffic on the road and the people that ride their motorcycles at high speeds and the people that like to race, but they race up, they race down. If they start in La Cañada and come on the 2 and come down Azusa Canyon, then it's 1 per time coming down instead of going up and down. So you have the people coming one way, you have people coming the other way. I don't really think it's going to really affect the traffic any worse than it is currently. And the concern about the lower area, the East Fork and portions of the North Fork area, those are because of water resources. And there's the river there, people bathe in that river, people vacation in the river. And so I think that's, that lower impact of cars is not going to come up to the Angeles crest. I also think it's actually, I'm surprised the people in Wrightwood don't really like this idea, because I would think the economic impact would be something they would be looking forward to. And I think that option 4, obviously I am a proponent for option 4. I think the viaduct idea is actually a very good idea, but I know myself, I've thought of that rock shed idea on certain areas and thought that might be something that actually could be converted to allow wildlife to go over the top of those areas. But I think in total, I don't think that's going to be that much of a negative impact. It is a very twisty, turny road. I don't think a lot of people like going up as far as Crystal Lake even. You see a lot of people turn around when you go up that way, and they never even make it up there. And I think people are going to be curious in the first few years, and you're going to probably have more traffic there. But I think overall, I think it's going to be a positive impact on the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jose Jimenez.
Good evening, Jose Jimenez, Director of Economic and Community Development for the City of Azusa. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. State Route 39 is a vital and important corridor here within the City of Azusa. A lot of comments you're hearing regarding SR-39. So we are carefully reviewing right now the environmental documentation and plan to have comments, written comments that is, prior to the May 11th deadline. So thank you for the opportunity to comment. Just wanted to put that as part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Brian Matsumoto. Brian? And Brian, so far as our last speaker, is there any other speakers, anyone else who'd like to speak tonight?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Brian Matsumoto, representing Nature for All, but I myself live in Temple City. We lean on the advice of the Sierra Club, and so speak in support of Alternative 2, the emergency option. I think we would say, you know, we definitely appreciate and understand that folks want to reopen this closed highway. It makes sense, obviously, from a connection aspect. You know, I myself, sure, I would love to get up there quicker, camp, hike, get over to Wrightwood, and folks vice versa, but it just seems like, as the EIR tells us and as history tells us, it does seem like the geological conditions and wildlife sensitivity in this section just are incompatible. You know, the constant rockfall, sensitive species. It does seem similar to that section of PCH where there's, you know, constant crumbling, or even the 710 freeway where finally decades later, you know, it was decided to be a no-go. You can't like stop nature or threaten a population survival. One aspect to look at is the Nelson's bighorn sheep. You know, growing up, I didn't know we had such incredible creatures. The EIR identifies the bighorn sheep as a California Department of Fish and Wildlife fully protected species and U.S. Forest Service sensitive species. The biological notes on page 213 mention that any loss of an individual bighorn sheep, even one, should be considered a potentially significant impact. So it's really hard to imagine how full road access would not impact this, you know, species that is kind of hanging on to survival in our area. Next, addressing the shuttle option. We happen to be an organization that really supports transit to trails. You know, we're partnered with City of Azusa to hopefully create access up to the San Gabriel Canyon area someday by transit. This proposal, however, really is pretty nonsensical. I myself am the project manager for the Mount Wilson Express project with City of Pasadena. We've been working for years now to create a shuttle up to the Mount Wilson area on Highway 2. This, however, seems to be a poorly conceived idea, like providing access only from the north to get to Crystal Lake obviously you would need a car to get all the way up there, drive over an hour or so, and there's multiple things about it that don't make sense. It was mentioned that the highway on Highway 2 is closed for a big chunk of winter, right? It's currently closed right now. So to say that it'll provide this amazing access again for everyone, it's like, well, not now and not for multiple months. Again, just reiterate support for option 2, and we would support, probably hiking, biking access. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing that there are no other speakers, and that was our last speaker, I have no remaining speaker cards, and I will officially close the public comment period. So again, we want to thank you all for attending. Your input and your time is valuable to us. We will take all of these comments back into the environmental process and be back in touch with you later. Again, thank you so much for being here this evening, and have safe travels and a good rest of your evening. Thank you.